And welcome everybody, Jim from Ballpark Nation. We are coming to you from Fayetteville, North Carolina, home of your Fayetteville Woodpeckers. This is a very special ball club and a very special town because part of their community that they help serve are the good folks at Fort Liberty. Now, Fort Liberty is home to some of America's best and brightest and bravest 82nd Airborne Special Ops, 18th Airborne Corps. You name it, they've got it, which means that no matter when you watch this episode, tomorrow, some of America's bravest sons and daughters are going to wake up to the sounds of reveille and they're going to get to work defending our country. So I thought it would be kind of fun if we had some fun and paid a little homage to what they experience on the daily. All right, everybody, off your cots, grab your socks. It's time for another edition of Ballpark Nation.
The Diamond, the place where legends are born, where hitters drop 400-foot bombs, where pitchers throw heat. The home of peaches, yard goats, trash pandas, and sod poodles. This is Ballpark Nation, your home for baseball from sea to shining sea. Now your host, the guy who could never crack his high school starting lineup, Jim Christopher.
And welcome everyone to Ballpark Nation. I'm your host, Jim Christopher, here with you as usual. And we've got a lot of fun planned for you today because today we're going to be talking about some of the things that I'm incredibly passionate about. In fact, 3 of them, because you know what they say, the best things come in threes. I'm not sure if they say that, but they should. I don't know if that's actually like a real saying, but you know what? We can start it here on this show. Now, obviously, we're talking a lot about baseball, and in particular, minor league baseball. In fact, we're heading back to one of my favorite spots in the entire sport. We're going to be talking about the movie Jaws. And in fact, later on, I'm going to be wearing a shirt that memorializes Chrissy Watkins. Rest in peace, Chrissy, just because you wanted to go swimming. But we're also going to be talking about the United States military. I'm a vet. I'm a former Army guy. I was in for 7 years, E6, 13 Fox, was a forward observer. And being a veteran is something I'm very passionate about. I enlisted like so many people do because I loved this country. And one of the happy surprises is that it also deepened my connection with baseball. But it's my military service that brings us to today's new rule, silly stat, and weird word of the week. Now, because it's the military, it can't be simple. Our weird word is actually an acronym, PCS, which stands for Permanent Change of Station. And what that essentially means is that Army members and Navy and Air Force and Marines, and etc., we don't really live in the same place for very long. Usually in the Army, you're at a duty station for about 3 years. And then after that time is up, you're given orders to uproot and go somewhere else. And in most situations, particularly for enlisted guys like myself, you don't really get a lot of say in where you're going. Now, sometimes you can re-enlist for a place. I wanted to go back to Oklahoma and Fort Sill, which I don't really know why. I'm not sure anybody voluntarily goes to Oklahoma, but I did. And again, that brought me back to baseball. Baseball actually has a long and deep relationship with the United States military. It was played during the Civil War. During World War I and World War II, commanders encouraged that units form teams as a way to build morale, keep exercise going, and to kind of keep that competition going. The World War II aircraft carrier, the USS Lexington, had a baseball team in which they played other ships. Now, one of the things you learn, the key to life in the military, is that a lot of it's hurrying and then a lot of it's waiting. It's kind of like being at the DMV, except, you could get shot at the end. Although I guess that does depend on which DMV you're going to. In World War II and in Korea, you had major league players like Bob Feller, Joe DiMaggio, and Ted Williams stop their playing careers to go fight in the war. It was a very different time when World War II occurred, and I really can't imagine Aaron Judge running down to volunteer to enlist for any reason, really. Although Aaron would be a perfect 60 gunner. I mean, he would just... But there was a sense of duty back then, and yes, I did say duty, but we're not going to be immature on the show today because it's serious stuff. Remember, we've already discussed the death of Chrissy Watkins. Remember Chrissy. But even today, baseball and the military go hand in hand. At most games, there's a moment where they recognize a veteran or a current service member. I actually remember going to an Astros game in 2017. This was the first game after the hurricane, and really everything hadn't been cleaned up, but at least I got to go back and play a game in Houston. And if you want to know why the Stros had to play a home game in Tampa, Google it. The story is wild, and I kind of don't maintain a family-friendly tone when I tell it. But back in Texas, I'm sitting there at Minute Maid Park for a rare doubleheader. Both the Mets and Astros chose to forego the Friday game. The Astros went to shelters to visit the kids and families, while the Mets took time out of their day to go feed first responders. I can't imagine a more wonderful celebration of what baseball can bring. Anyway, my brother and I go into the game and we're hanging out, and again, it's a doubleheader, and we're a couple of beers in. We drink through the first game and we drink through the gap, and then we drink into the second game. And about the third inning, they bring out a veteran to recognize, and my brother kind of gets a little anxious. He said, "Look at that guy. He was only in for 3 years, and he was just a specialist, and you were in for 7. You were a staff sergeant. You were in Bosnia. Why aren't you up there?" And I said, "Look, I appreciate where your head's at, but if you look at the years this guy was in, that's the Korean War. We're going to go ahead and let him have his moment." At ball games of all levels, you might see enlistment ceremonies, which is always super neat. At certain national holidays, you might get patriotic uniforms. You might get a military color guard for the national anthem. They really do make a really big effort to stay very connected with baseball and the military in a way that doesn't seem as forced as it does in other sports. But by far, the biggest thing that baseball, and in particular minor league baseball, gave me is it reminded me of church, more specifically Catholic Church. I'm a Catholic, and one of the things I really like about my faith is I can go to Mass in any country in the world, in any language, and it's still Mass. I can still be part of it. It's still something that I can feel like I'm definitely still represented in this community. Baseball is a little bit like that too. Particularly, again, these minor league games where the game being played at a ballpark feels familiar. Wherever you're from, you can just go and feel welcome. For example, when I was stationed in Oklahoma, I would go see the Oklahoma City Redhawks, and for about 2 hours, I felt like I'm at home again. I could have been at Minute Maid Park. It felt familiar and welcoming. So that's one of the biggest impacts that baseball had on my life while I was serving, and I think a big reason why my love for baseball has only grown. And with so many minor league teams being near a military base, it's just natural that that could be an oasis to kind of forget for a second the stress of what your job is. I just think it's one of the reasons why my love for the game of baseball as a whole, beyond just my team, really grew, was being able to experience those games in military towns. And then as we've been going on our trips, ever since I've been out of the military, and I'll go visit a team like the Woodpeckers or the Missions or the Ironbirds in Aberdeen and feel again connected to not just my baseball family, but to my military family. It's something that I really feel like I need. If you think about it, one of the things that baseball does for the military community, it's kind of like a force multiplier because it is a morale boost. It does offer these young men and women who are serving our country a respite from the responsibility that they deal with on a day-to-day basis. And that service is something that I think we should be celebrating baseball for. And in fact, the team we have on this week, we are going to celebrate for what they do for the military community. And we just got our orders, and today's mission brings us to the amazing Segra Stadium, home of your Fayetteville Woodpeckers. And actually, we got to go in 2019 when the Woodpeckers played their first season. And so it was really fun to come back in 2024 for Ballpark Nation and see how the ballpark has changed and developed. More importantly, how the area around it has developed. Because they say, if you do it right, a minor league baseball team, even in the minors, even single A like the Woodpeckers, can help bring in other economic activity to the area. So it was cool to see all of that. It was cool to see how the brand itself has continued to evolve past that first year, and I was just tickled to be there. Now, one of the things that I find funny about the Fayetteville Woodpeckers is the name. And any of us who have been in a military post know that the red cockaded woodpecker is either your best or worst friend. When I was stationed on Fort Polk, it's an endangered species. And so if you see one, you were like supposed to mark the tree and then you couldn't go anywhere near it. And some days that meant training was canceled for the day. So thank you, woodpeckers, for doing a lot of things for this country, including getting me out of the Louisiana heat, at least for a little bit. So we had a great time at the game, and we got to sit down to someone who has to be one of the nicest guys in baseball at any level, Andrew Chapman. He's the voice of the Woodpeckers. I'm hoping he'll let us call him Chappie like he does his other friends. Not just because I'm a big fan of Chappie Sinclair from Iron Eagle. That's the deepest dive you're going to get today, I promise.
The way the brand has changed over the years still has a lot of the core values and recognizing, the military culture, baseball success, championship success from the Houston Astros that all starts right here. In 2023, our big brand was the future is here, because we've had guys like Jeremy Pena and Corey Jolks and Jake Myers and all those guys come through here, JP France. So it's all about, starting championship level ball players at the single A level. So we try and lean into that as much as we can. And then on top of that, the military culture is a big part as well. We recently created a new identity in 2023 called the Fayetteville 80 Deuces.
So as we said, the 80 Deuces, you probably picked up on, is a reference to the 82nd Airborne Division. Right now, I think the only remaining true airborne division we have. I'm sure I'll get fact-checked on that, but I'll use a pop-up to clarify if I'm wrong, because, that's the best thing to do with pop-ups. But we got to talk about the design of the 80 Deuces, the uniform, the logo, and how it connected to their legacy in World War II, and the super cool nickname the Germans gave them.
Devils and Baggy Pants back in World War II by the Germans as they parachuted down onto Europe. And it's a devil with a parachute logo. It's something that we wanted to be able to rebrand to 3-4 times over the course of the year. Across the Astros system, there's some fun rebrands. You have the Whataburgers, I think it is, in Corpus Christi at the AA level. So we wanted some sort of a unique local identity that people could relate to in town, that we could pivot to a couple times a year. So the 82nd Airborne is kind of the big, military unit in the area, and that's something that we wanted to lean into. So our creative team got to work on it. I think in 2022 with the military Army green and the maroon color scheme as well, which looks like the uniform that the 82nd Airborne themselves wear. And that was a brand that we unveiled at the start of the 2023 season and has been really well received by the local community.
We immediately started talking about the nature of the fan base and how you get this combination of people that live in Fayetteville for all of their lives and people that are just there because they're assigned to one of the units in Fort Liberty, and how, again, that gets to be their brief respite from, if you're a soldier, if you're a single soldier living in the barracks, you need things that you can use to get out of the barracks that aren't going to harm your career. And a baseball game is definitely one of those.
It's not lost upon us the real world sacrifices that people have to make, and the fact that we want to be a staple of this community, but our community is really built upon the sacrifices that our military are making on a daily basis. We want to be that form of entertainment where they can disconnect in the evening, bring their family out, have an affordable night out at the ballpark, and we've been able to establish that, I think, in 5 years of baseball in downtown Fayetteville. The city itself has a long history of minor league baseball, going back to the 90s with the Cape Fear Crocs, the Fayetteville Generals of the 1980s, and you can go all the way back to the 50s and even the early 1910s to find affiliated professional baseball in the city of Fayetteville. But this is, I guess, the most state-of-the-art it's ever been, right? A downtown ballpark, a beautiful concourse where people can hang out in right field and left field on the berm, the kids, a big park that can host close to 6,000 people. And we just wanted to be the entertainment hub, of Fayetteville. And I think ever since this ballpark was built, it's helped the local small business culture around the area as well. You see a lot of different businesses moving into the area. This was just a dirt plot in between train tracks, 5-6 years ago when they created this plan to form the Fayetteville Woodpeckers. And it's just that next version of professional baseball that we want to be, a staple for folks who have been in the area for a long time and come out consistently every night, like some of our season ticket holders. But for the folks who come to Fayetteville for the first time and they're just looking for something to do, we want to be able to reach out to them and show them that there's a fun opportunity downtown and just create a show that's unique night after night that keeps the regulars entertained, but then also brings out the new folks in the community and gives them a fun place to hang out.
Now, much like a lot of things in the world today, there are some prevailing notions, thoughts, or opinions that really probably aren't super accurate, but we just assume they're a thing because they're a thing. One of those being any minor league team that's owned by the parent company has to take and automatically becomes much more of a corporate, sterile, you can't have any fun environment. Well, you could say that about the Astros owning the Woodpeckers, except that they have jerseys with just peckers on them.
Yeah, I think just right away when you name your team the Woodpeckers, which we did with a Name of the Team contest in the local paper back in 2018, the name unveiled in 19, that it's just natural for human nature to quickly abbreviate woodpeckers with peckers. And, whether you consider it some innuendo or not, we have always had a little bit of fun with it. And for a little while, we were hesitant internally to move to the shortened Peckers name. But after a couple of years, we sort of got the okay from up top, right? The Houston Astros are, we're proudly owned by Houston, so we make sure we communicate with them on every aspect of our branding and our marketing. And after, they gave us the okay to lean into a name that a lot of the local community was already saying out loud, we put a couple of T-shirts into the store, and they sold out within about 24 hours. And we said, all right, this is something that the people have spoken, the fans have spoken. They want some of this, and it's been a great selling item where we just say, go Peckers, go Woodpeckers. We got a little hand sign that we do every once in a while too.
Peckers on the jersey? Tell me that's not fun. So we've got the 80 Deuces, we have the Woodpeckers, which they sometimes wear the Peckers jersey. I'm going to keep mentioning that as much as humanly possible. But again, they have a lot of fun with their brand on theme nights and giveaways, all that fun stuff.
We just recently had a very successful baseball heritage night. I talked about the history of baseball in Fayetteville, whether it's the Crocs or the Generals, or going back to the Fayetteville Highlanders, as they were called back in the 50s, the pre-World War I era. We had a baseball heritage night where we encouraged fans to wear the jersey of the team that they enjoyed in the past. There was a Coastal Plain League team in Fayetteville for about 20 years as well, called the Swamp Dogs. There was an independent franchise, so we leaned into that. Do the dog night, which is always big. The wagon Wednesday, which we just recently had, so you're able to bring your pups out to the ballpark. Just anything that leans into the local sports culture within North Carolina as well. We're fortunate around here to have a ton of colleges in the area, whether you're a Tar Heel fan or an NC State fan, or I guess a Duke fan, which is the other big one in the area. We try and do some local stuff like that, like a college night where you rep your school.
Now, every ballpark, or at least every ballpark worth its salt, should have a little bit of some idiosyncrasies that really make it stand out. It might be an excellent view, like watching the Matsui Miners in Alaska, or it could be like Fayetteville, where a large train goes by the outfield.
One of the great features of this ballpark is that it was built right in between a pair of train tracks, so there's...
It's cool during the game.
Yeah. In 2023, we did a salute to trains night, where we just blow the horn in the ballpark. So they like to cruise through here.
Now, if you're expecting something like Brewster's Millions, I'll be honest, I was too. But guys, there's so much positivity, so much love, and so much worth going to see if you're hanging out at a game at Segra Stadium. One, you've got Bunker, the mascot, which is he's a lot of fun. He's a large woodpecker, and he will come around and give you hugs. And sometimes you just want a hug. But they have theme nights, they've got fireworks, they have giveaways, they've got dollars. I mean, they have everything that minor league baseball comes to offer. And they're doing it with a sense of purpose and a sense of mission as they support one of the most important installations in the United States military, Fort Liberty. So in short, the Woodpeckers, while recognizing that so much of their fan base might be moving around, does a great job of welcoming and creating a family environment for everyone that walks through the gates, whether you're there for one time every 5 years or you're there every night because you're a season ticket holder. So it's a great ballpark experience. And in fact, as we rate our minor league ballparks, I'm going to call this a Jim's must attend for your baseball trips. I want my cup back. Y'all know me. You know how I earn a living. Starboard, Hooper, ain't you watching it? I ain't gonna take this abuse much longer. So I'm driving back from a baseball game the other day, and I've got my Ballpark Nation playlist. I'm gonna include a link to that. I think you would dig some of the songs on it. Anyway, I've got the Ballpark Nation playlist on, and Boys of Summer from Don Henley comes on, and I just love everything about it. The writing, just how specific it feels. And it got me thinking about, as you know, we see summer takes forever to get here and it flies by so fast. I started thinking about some of the things that I miss when summer's gone. Now, summer for me is a lot of things. Clearly, it's baseball. You've just watched about 22 minutes of baseball stuff. But it's also sharks, Shark Week, and most importantly, the movie Jaws. Now, I do have my Durham Bull Sharks hat on. This is one of their theme nights during Shark Week, which they honor the greatest series of television in the history of television. I have not missed a Shark Week since it started. I love sharks so much that the highlight of my 2024 summer was jumping into a shark cage in Hawaii with my wife and my daughter and her husband and my 4 and 6-year-old grandkids. That's right. Both my granddaughter and grandson jumped in the shark cage with me, and we had an amazing time experiencing these mythical and mysterious and beautiful creatures. My fascination with sharks began with the movie Jaws. And, you know, my mother claimed at some point that she first felt me move when she was watching the movie in 1975. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, but when you're an independent filmmaker and you've got to write your bio for film festival submissions, well, that's definitely something you put. You know, if you look behind me, I've got some pretty epic Jaws memorabilia. I've got stuff all over the office. And down to my left, I'll include a photo of her, is my dog Quint. Yes, we have a little German Shepherd. She was named after Quint from the movie Jaws. And we didn't realize it at the time, but she was also the 5th dog Jessica and I have had in our marriage. Not at once, but in our marriage. In fact, right now we have 3 German Shepherds. We have Quint, we have Lord Vader, and we have the very famous Orbit. Here's some cute photos because there's always time for puppy photos. And remember, if you don't like puppy photos, I don't want you watching the show anymore because I don't want that kind of person dealing with my karma and interrupting my chi, if you will. Pretty much anytime I see something with Jaws on it, I think of summer. I probably watch it 4 or 5 times a summer. It is my favorite movie of all time. And I would say probably the number 2 or 3 greatest American film of all time. The Godfather being number 1. But I love it. I love everything about it. So when I'm scrolling through some pages and I'm looking up some Jaws stuff and people are getting hyped because the summer of 2025 is the 50th anniversary, I came across the book Summer of the Shark by DeVito Kelly. And I had to check it out because it combined 2 of my favorite things. It combined a love of baseball and a love of Jaws. But really what you get out of it is a really great, fun, cute coming-of-age story about a relationship between a grandfather and a grandson. And one of the things that is the same for everybody that I've interviewed on this show that's talking about how their team won their first World Series in, decades, is it always comes back to, oh my God, my grandfather lived to see it, or oh my God, my grandfather didn't. So there's something about that grandfather-grandson relationship that really made me fall in love with the book. It really does interweave some great baseball stuff, some great Jaws stuff. And I was excited because we got to catch up with author DeVito Kelly for a few minutes to talk a little bit about where the book came from and how much of him is in the book. It's a very specific coming-of-age story. You've included 2 very specific things with baseball, particularly the Reds, and also
with Jaws. So how much of the book is fiction? How much of it's real? How much of it is inspired by stuff that happened that was real?
Well, I'd say a good portion is actually based on my life. I'm originally from Cincinnati, grew up a Reds fan, of course, and always a big Jaws fan. I love sharks. I learned to scuba dive when we lived in Florida, so it's in my blood. When I was writing the story, this was the second novel or third novel that I wrote, and I was trying to think of, you want to write about things that you like. And I just thought, I know it's been a while since my Reds have, been to the World Series, 1990. But, vaguely, I was pretty young, when they went back to back in 75 and 76. But I know it was just a memorable World Series. So I thought, well, how can I combine the World Series and Jaws? And that's kind of like where the story came from.
I started my film career now almost 20 years. Oh my God, 20 years ago. And one of the things that I learned as my career had its ups and downs is that the projects that always did well for me were the ones that came from somewhere real. And I wanted to talk to DeVito about that in that part of the book for him that makes it feel that much more authentic.
I knew that, 74 is when they were filming the movie. It was a disaster. Spielberg thought he was going to get fired, and he was a clarinet player. So there's a scene in the book where, well, if he plays the clarinet, I'm sure he would need reeds for it. So, the grandfather owns a music store. But I thought, well, he's going to have one in Martha's Vineyard, of course. And that's how that whole scene came about. And I thought, well, all the things that go with it. I said, wouldn't that be cool if they ended up being extras in the movie? I didn't want it to be the focal point of the story, but I wanted it to be part of the kind of like the backdrop. So when they're there, they're filming the movie, and late at night they find out where the shark is, and they see the mechanical shark, Bruce, and then I thought, as a Reds fan, I thought, it's got to incorporate the World Series in there somehow.
So I want to thank author DeVito Kelly for hopping on the show. We actually had a much longer conversation where we talked all things Jaws and baseball and shark conservation, reason Shark Week exists. Couldn't fit it all in this episode, but we will release the unedited version of the interview in the coming weeks. Can't recommend enough picking up Summer of the Shark. It is a very breezy, it's a very heartwarming read. It definitely will touch you in the cockles of your heart, or even the subcockle area. It's the perfect book, in fact, to pick up before you go to the beach and you're sitting in a chair and you don't really want to go in the water because you watched Jaws last night and you learn that most shark attacks happen in about 3 feet of water and about 10 feet from the beach.
And now on to close it out, the right-hander from Houston, Texas, Jim Christopher.
That wraps us up from Fayetteville and Fort Liberty. Thanks to the Woodpeckers for having us out. And to all the troops on Fort Liberty, thank you for being the tip of the spear. They asked me if I wanted to go airborne in basic, and I just didn't understand the logic of jumping out of a plane that's eventually going to land. I mean, come on. And a big shout out to Eric, Matt, and Sean, and all the military spouses that also go all over the world helping serve our country. I'm really proud to have worn the same uniform as you, and I love the fact that our relationship has just gotten stronger through the game of baseball. Again, that's our show. I've just gotten orders. I'm PCSing to another ballpark. I'm Jim Christopher, and we can't wait to see you out there, be it by bullpen cart, plane, or, even a parachute. We'll see you at the ballpark.
Take me out to the ball game. Take me out with the crowd. Buy me some peanuts and Cracker Jacks. I don't care if I ever get back, 'cause it's root for the home team. They don't win, it's a shame, 'cause it's 1, 2, 3 strikes, you're out at the